It's an honor to be here, reading from my first book for the first time in my hometown. I want to thank Nicole and William for their excellent readings. Nicole, for the 3 years I've known her, has become one of my greatest friends and one of my favorite writers. And William, it was a real pleasure to get to know your poems. I didn't realize that Jim Zimmerman was your connection to this place. In my book, I thank Jim for making me feel like a poet even when I'm writing prose. And we did a tribute to Jim Zimmerman last Northern Arizona Book Festival, so some of you may have heard me say this, but the only time I got emotional about my first book getting published was when Jesse Sensabar wrote me an email, and he said, you know what, I think Jim would be really proud of you. And that's the only time I teared up, because that's really what I wanted, was to make Jim really proud of me. It is also an honor to be the opening band for Diana Gabaldon. If any of you are longtime Flagstaff residents, you'll get this reference. Some of you may not. I feel like Sandpaper Love opening for Tool. If you don't know those bands, I feel like a really small local band opening for a local band gone national. So it's a true pleasure to open for a Flagstaff native girl made good. I'm not a similar writer to Diana, but I'm going to read a fairy tale tonight in my hopes that that'll prepare you for the fantastical other world that she'll take us to, whichever one that happens to be. So this is a fairy tale, and it's called Ochre is the Color of Deserts and Dried Blood. Yeah. My thank yous were my bookmark, and now I don't have a bookmark. Hold, please. If you want to marry me, the phlebotomist said to the chemist, you must complete these tasks. She said to him, get me limonite, hematite, and geothite for me to dye my dress to a halcyon gilt. Gather me ebony, mahogany, and teak for me to fashion a crown. Dig me up bronze, alabaster, and onyx for me to craft ornaments to adorn me. I'll need graphite and ash for my lashes, lapis lazuli and cobalt for my lids, the fruit of prickly pears for my lips. Brew me chartreuse, absinthe, and claret for our feast. They took DNA tests when they decided to get hitched. They wanted to know who they were descended from, who they could combine to create their lineage, their traditions, what they could pass on. They learned that he was Swedish, Irish, and Polish Jewish. She was German, Armenian, and red ochre. What's red ochre? The phlebotomist asked the chemist. The chemist did not know. They looked it up. The red ochre are people named and studied by scientists and thought to no longer exist. I draw others' blood and had no idea what was in mine, said the phlebotomist. My family has lived in Nevada for generations, not Washoe, not Winnemucca. I'm not Duckwater Shoshone, Lovelock Paiute, Mojave. I'm not descended from the Confederated Tribes of the Goshute Reservation. Some of your ancestors are from what's now called Illinois, the chemist told her. I'm descended from a people thought to be extinct, named because they buried their dead under red minerals. I'm glad you study chemicals, the phlebotomist said to the chemist, the things that make us, but you don't study people. You don't put humans in a taxonomy. We need new traditions, the phlebotomist said. I want to cover my body with things from the land, things the earth made, elements from this place I am from. We need new American traditions, since I don't know my own. The chemist went to deserts, jungles, and caves, and he brought her back what she'd asked. He said, here is your hydrated iron oxide, my love, your 3 kinds of ochre, yellow, red, brown. Here is your wood, your metal and stone, your cosmetics, your intoxicants. She'd woven a dress from the silk of worms, laced with the pearls of oysters and shells of periwinkles. She mixed the crushed compounds with water and submerged the dress, gilding it. It dried while she painted her face. She donned her crown, gown, and jewelry, and asked her betrothed, who wore a jet velvet suit with a ribbon tied in a bow around his neck, what shall we do to tie ourselves to each other and to this land? The chemist said, to fully commit to what will be, I think we need to tour what once was. He loaded up their red 67 Mustang for a road trip and said, that's my suggestion for a new American tradition. They drove to the Nevada Proving Ground, where there once had been mushroom clouds and were now craters. They saw hollows made by bombs named cyclamen, lampblack, sturgeon, petrel, kestrel, baseball, tuna, bevel, cobble, minnow, cerise, sepia, pike. Deep divots in the pale sand, deviations from an almost blank expanse, basins, cavities, caverns, where once had been conflagration. The phlebotomist thought they should worry about radiation. The chemist said the longer-lived isotopes like plutonium and uranium would linger for tens of thousands of years, so he wouldn't live on the land, he wouldn't drink the water, but after a quick visit, they should be okay. All the atomic glass, fused sand, had been scavenged by previous tourists, but the chemist said that's not something they'd want in their pockets anyway. This tainted, painted desert, he said, as they climbed back into their car. They drove to the Lost City Museum, full of artifacts that were going to be covered as the Hoover Dam filled Boulder Canyon and Virgin Canyon to make Lake Mead, but were salvaged, put in glass boxes in a building. Woven black and white baskets, painted black and white pottery, manos and metates, arrowheads. The phlebotomist wanted to hold it all in her palms. But you weren't allowed to touch. The oils in our hands can ruin. Some call those people the Anasazi, some call them the ancestral Puebloans, some call them the Hitsatsino. Some say they disappeared. People of the Taos, Acoma, Isleta, Cochiti, Kewa, Jemez, Okeowinge, Nambe, Laguna, San Ildefonso, San Felipe, Santa Ana, Santa Clara, Sandia, Picuras, Pujaque, Tescue, Zuni, Zia, Isleta, and Hopi Pueblos say that those people are their ancestors. I don't know how to learn this, other than from a museum, the phlebotomist said. They drove to the Valley of Fire and saw petroglyphs. The phlebotomist wanted to see where people had lived, the buildings they made, but there aren't any left in Nevada, what people call ruins. So they looked at places where people had carved the stone's patina to expose lighter rock underneath, red-orange under red-brown. Crosses and circles and weapons and animals and people and plants. The phlebotomist looked around her. Some of what the ancients saw is still here, she said. They drove to the ghost town of Rhyolite, saw its abandoned buildings, the house made of bottles of Adolphus Busch beer and opium medicine flagons sealed in concrete, crumbled schools, derelict banks, abandoned stores, dilapidated railroad depots. At high noon, the shadows stacked under the broken bits of neglected walls that once held roofs, that once housed people and wares. It felt no more or less haunted than all the other places they'd been that day. They drove over the Hoover Dam and saw a white ring showing that the water level of Lake Mead had dropped, lower now because of drought, because of more people using water. They knew the entire canyon below was now white, minerals deposited on top of minerals. If the lake emptied of water, even the chemist didn't know if the white would dissolve, flake off, reveal the former colors of the canyon. The ruins of St. Thomas are sometimes visible when the water level in Lake Mead drops, but they couldn't see the surviving parts of that town today. They stopped for gas at the Moapa Paiute Travel Plaza and met the owner. He told them, "My mom started this business. She died of cancer. They say it's from watching the tests, being downwind of the fallout. I inherited this place. There are only 329 of us," he said. "We've put solar panels all over our land. We sell electricity to Los Angeles, but someday I want us to be the ones who light up Las Vegas." They could have gambled at the casino or bought fireworks or liquor or beer, but they just got an Indian taco to share. "We didn't invent this," the owner told them. The Navajo of Arizona did, the Dene, using flour, sugar, salt, and lard that was given to them by the government in New Mexico after they were forced to walk 300 miles away from their homeland. They usually ate vegetables and beans. Most people think it's an ancestral food, and I guess it is in a way. Each tribe serves fry bread a different way. Ours has hot red chilies. Good, yes? They nodded with their mouths full. After their tour, it was time for the ceremony. He drove into the desert, the wilderness. The layers were mauve, magenta, maroon, vermilion, crimson, scarlet, sienna, umber, ecru, puce, fulvus, topped by a cerulean, azure, viridian sky. The layers were coral, salmon, tangerine, oriole, marigold, canary, saffron, poppy. The striations were eggplant, lilac, lavender, violet, plum, heliotrope. The strata were almond, eucalyptus, fawn, as if they were surrounded by living things, sustenance, rock that could walk away or bloom or feed them. Under the witness of hawks, snakes, and coyotes, under the witness of ocotillos, saguaros, and choyas, under the witness of survival, with knowledge of all the destruction that came before, with no knowledge of what devastation was ahead of them, they married each other. To make it official, they drove into the glittering sea of Las Vegas, went to a drive-through chapel, exchanged palladium rings, signed the papers, kissed and said cheese into the flash of a Polaroid, all without ever leaving their car. They drove to the drive-through and feasted on grass-fed burgers, organic sweet potato fries sprinkled with herbes de Provence, and they drank the glimmering bottles of hooch that the chemist had made. They listened to hip-hop, blues, and jazz, the best American inventions, they agreed, far superior to the atom bomb, manifest destiny, and reservations. Thank you for this ritual, the phlebotomist said to the chemist. I feel bound to you, and to the earth and its people. I've planned a celebration, the chemist told the phlebotomist. I'm so glad you're mine. They drove to the neon sign graveyard, where the broken signs go. Neon signs can last for decades, he told her, but eventually they stop. But there's been enough ruin, he told her. I want to show you something else. I learned how to fix them. He tinkered with a cowboy, and then he blazed. He used his tools on a cowgirl, and she shone. He restored a diamond ring, red roses, a horseshoe, a slot machine with 3 red cherries spilling gold coins, and they all lit up like flames. She applauded. It's so beautiful, she said. He pointed to red, that's neon. He pointed to yellow, that's helium. Green, neon, and argon combined. Violet, argon. Turquoise, argon and mercury. Purple is argon and xenon. He pointed to white and said, that's carbon dioxide, what we exhale, what our car emits, and what's heating our planet. Thank you, she said, and here is my gift to you. I learned how to make fireworks. The gas station owner showed me while you were paying for our gasoline. She set off a firecracker that sparkled red, and she said strontium. Yellow, and she said sodium. Green exploded next, and she said barium. Blue, and she said copper. She knew he knew, but she liked showing him. Every time he gasped. Silver, and she said a mixture of titanium, zirconium, and magnesium alloys. The last was gold, and she said hematite, like my dress, and he'd never seen her smile so brightly. They kissed their best yet kiss. And so they celebrated and solidified their union, surrounded by all the elements, on land that held the bones and bodies of some of their ancestors, others oceans away. Thank you so much.